All right, there we go. Perseverance, right? That can be the word of the day. All right, so thanks everyone for being here. I think we might have lost a few people in the transition over to this, so we can do roll call for now and then just note as whoever can maybe jump back on in the next couple of minutes here. Does that sound okay, Sonia?
Yes, I will start roll call now.
All right, thank you.
I'm here, Julie Seastrom, CT Clusie. Jemiah Wassam, he said he will be here at 3:30. Alyssa Lane Keen.
Sure.
Valerie Switzler. Diane Tiemann. Michael Cherry. Angela Fasana. Jennifer Jackson. Melissa Montero. Becky Cantrell. Coquel. Marcia Frost. Jory Spencer. Jamie Crane. Jesse Jackson. Jennifer Reed. Malia Skunkcat. We did prior to changing over.
We did. And Alyssa did send the email and an updated meeting invite, and they're on it. So hopefully Becky, Cantrell, Malia,
Jamie, Jory,
yeah.
they were on, which would have given us quorum.
Alyssa, is the other meeting still open?
Yes, it didn't end. I can pop back over to it. Hi, Julie. I see Julie and Becky, but I can pop back over and see if anyone went back in. I'll be back.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Things were going so smoothly, but it's okay. I see Jory rejoined, I should say, and Becky, and Angela Fasana.
That would give us 6, which would give us quorum.
Okay, fabulous. Kathy, thank you for sticking around. We'll get you going here in a second once I think Alyssa pops back in. And hopefully Malia follows.
No one's in the other link.
Okay. I think it's just Malia who we're waiting on. Although we do have a quorum now, and so hopefully Malia can pop on in the next couple minutes. So
If Malia and Jemiah join, that'll give us 7, but we currently have quorum.
okay. Thank you for doing roll call. All right, so I should be sharing my screen now? Can everyone see it? With the TAC meeting slide deck? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, I was just gonna quickly go over what the agenda is and then I'll pass it over to Kathy. So let's go ahead and make it big. Whoa, not from the beginning. There, now we're at the beginning. All right, well, welcome. So we're going to talk a little bit about legislative session and a couple of components that relate to the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund. And then we're going to talk about the funding distribution options for the Tribal Early Learning Fund. And we'll have some space for tribal discussion, and then we'll close. And that is the plan. Other than that, like I said, Kathy is here to kind of go over what to expect in legislative session and give us some insight on testifying to the legislature. I just for clarification, if you weren't here in the last meeting, that we and the one before that, we did talk about the process for providing, going through the legislative session, how the bill gets introduced. And so I won't go over it all again. Kathy will touch on some of that. She's our interim government affairs manager, but basically there will be an ask for tribal advisory committee members to participate in providing testimony to the legislature. It's going to be, the bill will go through and be heard in the House committee, the Committee on Early Childhood and Human Services, and then also in the Senate on the Committee on Education over there. So both in-person and written testimony are options. And to clarify, for in-person, generally, yes, it is physically in person, although virtual is an option if that's necessary. So I'll pass it over to Kathy and pull up her slide deck. Or did you want to pull up your slides, Kathy? What would be better?
Yeah, thank you for offering that, Dana. I think it would, I could think it'd be better if I share my screen and I'll just go through the slides, and we'll also make sure to share these slides with everyone after today's meeting. So yeah, just by way of introductions again, hi everybody. My name is Kathy Way, and I am the Interim Government Affairs Manager here at DELC. I believe last month was my first meeting joining you all, so it was just very introductory at that point, but I'm about 4 weeks in, so just getting everything up to speed and getting ready for the session. So as Dana mentioned, I am going to be taking about 15 minutes today to really cover sort of the high level points of the legislative session that is expected to start on January 21st, so just in about 2 weeks. And the majority of my time will also be spent on really more of the technical aspects of how do folks sign up to testify, just what that testimony process will entail. And I also just want to acknowledge that you know, there's just a wealth of expertise and a knowledge and experience in among the TAC members around probably already testifying before the legislature, to folks who this might be your first time in terms of your interest in going before the legislative committee and testifying. So I just want to acknowledge that there's probably a broad spectrum of experience when it comes to already testifying. And so if this is a lot of information that you already know, thank you for listening to the pieces again. And if this is your first time, we just want to be here as a resource for you all in really upholding your sovereignty, and also just providing resources, additional information as needed. So I will go ahead and share my screen, and let me just take a second here. Okay, perfect. Great. And hopefully everybody can see my slides. If I could just get a quick thumbs up, that would be helpful. Cool. Okay, great. Thank you. So the legislative session is, as I mentioned, just around the corner. This is just a little bit of a background in terms of what is the makeup of the legislative body will look like. So folks may already be aware, but there are two chambers that make up the state legislature, and these lawmakers are responsible for both passing the state budget as well as passing laws for the next 2 years. So there is currently a supermajority in both chambers, and the supermajority just allows the party in control to pass new taxes or amend existing taxes if they wish to do that. I also want to acknowledge that there are about a dozen or so brand new legislators who are going to be joining either as senators or representatives this session. And that's actually really exciting for DELC because it's an opportunity to provide further engagement, relationship building, and just education about this agency and the work that we do to uplift all of our children and families and communities. So we will continue to be meeting with new legislators. And by we, sorry, I should say that Director Chatterjee and myself, and of course, if any of you are also interested in legislative meetings, please definitely let us know. But we know that the Tribal Early Learning Fund and Plan is one of our priority bills. So we will definitely be talking to legislators about just the push and the need for that bill to move forward. I also want to mention that there are quite a few members of leadership that are going to be starting in this upcoming session. These are just a few of the key leaders that we are going to continue meeting with. The Senate President, for example, and the Speaker of the House both have a lot of control when it comes to developing the membership of the committees and also setting their legislative priorities and their agenda. So we will make sure that as an agency, we are meeting with these leaders and that we also are letting them know about what our priorities are for the session. Here, I think this was really a sort of a request that came from TAC last time, where just folks had really great questions about the legislative session in terms of important dates that we should be aware of. So this calendar is posted on the Oregon Legislative website. It's also known as OLIS. And after you receive these slides, there is a link here to the full calendar. So this is just the first couple of months through April of all the different session deadlines and happenings. But session will continue through June of this year. And we hope that Sine Die, which means the end of session, will happen, I believe, maybe either the 3rd or 4th week of June. So we're all kind of looking to that point when session is over, and hopefully they'll pass our budget and they'll pass our agenda. So just a few things here. As I mentioned, the January 21st date, that is Monday. That is the first day of session. I am hoping that by this date, we will get a really good idea of where our bills are landing and the expected public hearing date. We are going to try our best to be proactive in our communication with you all for your bill. So we will give as far out as advance notice as possible for when the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund bill will be up for a public hearing. But it could honestly be as early as the 2nd week of session, so end of January, beginning of February. So I just want to note that. And I think this training is also just really timely, right? So we're trying to get things organized. We're trying to see who would be interested in testifying. So again, really just appreciate the time that you're giving me today to just really go deeper into how can we collaborate and coordinate with you all. So again, this is just very high level, but there are 3 priority bills that our agency is advocating for this session. And some of this might already be familiar to you. Hopefully the third one is the most exciting. They're all really great bills. But the third one, of course, House Bill 2815 is the Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund. So again, as I mentioned, we really want to center the tribal sovereignty and the self-determination to support language, cultural revitalization, professional development to meet the tribal early learning and childcare goals. We know that this committee was just really instrumental in coming up with recommendations, really creating the plan, and also helping with the funding ask. And we know that at the update I provided last month that the governor's recommended budget included the additional money for the Tribal Early Learning Fund. So we're really excited about that budget note. And I'm going to really just spend the next 10 or so minutes of my time really, again, diving deeper into the different legislative committees as well as the training itself. So when we talk about testifying, the audience that community members are really testifying to, or the main group of people that we are speaking directly with are the legislative committee members. So as I mentioned before, a bill must be scheduled for a public hearing in a committee before it gets voted out and before the bill continues to move on through the session. So starting in a policy committee is really important. And this is where testimonies are also really valuable. So a typical committee is comprised of 5 to 7 members. They have a chair and a co-chair, sometimes 2 vice chairs, depending on the committee composition. If it is a House committee, then we will be talking to representatives. And if it is a Senate committee, then it will be senators. And certain committees also are joint committees. And so you'll see that the Joint Ways and Means Committee, which is primarily the committee in charge of approving the budget, will have both senators and representatives serving on that committee. So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some of the main committees that our government affairs team will be tracking. So all 3 of our bills will be starting on the House side, most likely being heard in the House Early Childhood and Human Services Committee. So just by reference, we have the chair, we have the vice chairs named here. And also something that's really exciting is that there is now a new Senate Early Childhood Committee that has been sort of newly created this session, and the chair of that will be Senator Lisa Reynolds. So we have great relationships with Senator Reynolds' office. She used to serve as chair of the House Early Childhood Committee before she came over to the Senate. So we'll continue building those relationships with her. So this is where, again, we just dive deeper into all of the different ways that folks can advocate and provide testimony. And as I mentioned before, testifying is one of the best ways for legislators to hear directly about the way that policy or legislation will influence you or your families or your community's lives. It's really just a powerful tool to again lift your voice and talk about your own experience on a particular issue and why it's important. So again, our government affairs team, we will be in regular communication with you all when the bill will be heard in committee. And once the bill is also posted on OLIS, you're also more than welcome to go to the legislative website and track the bill as well. So there's an opportunity to sign up for alerts for when the bill will be heard in committee. And so, of course, we can we can keep an open communication between each other in terms of when things get scheduled. But the public can also go onto OLIS in the next few weeks here once the bills get uploaded, and look at all of the different committee information. And so I just want to note that too. You don't have to go through us to do any of that in the next couple of weeks. So there's really 3 ways that folks can provide testimony. As Dana mentioned earlier, in-person testimony. This is where here's a picture of a committee room, and those are legislators behind the desk. But this is really where folks are going to be in the state building, in a room. There might be an audience depending on other agenda items that day. I also want to note that for folks who are oftentimes traveling more than 100 miles to testify, oftentimes the chair gives priority for those community members to go first, because they just want to acknowledge that, you know, people are coming a long way to show up and to testify. So I just want to make that point. Of course, you know, if folks are traveling, if there are traveling considerations, or just getting to Salem, you know, poses a barrier for you, there's also an online or remote testimony option as well. And so there's some really specific examples as to how you can testify through the online option. And last but not least, there's also a written testimony submission as well. So I will go ahead and cover the testifying and how to submit written testimony. So when you are testifying in person, you can actually testify up to 30 minutes before the start of the committee meeting. So if you decide on that day, you've got some time in your calendar, you'd like to, you know, you can make it to Salem, great. You can sign up for testimony on that day, just as long as it's 30 minutes before the committee starts. And so again, all of these links will be provided to you in the PowerPoint, but you can go online at the Oregon Legislative website, and there's 2 ways to sign up to testify in person. So on the main page, you can either click on, I've circled to 2 places. So you can search for the committee and click on the committee and testify there. Or you can click here where this is just their the search tool, and you can just type in the bill number. So there's 2 ways of testifying. And then when you reach this page, which this is just a sample page, but this is actually a great example of a bill, because in the 2021 session, this was actually Doug's bill. So it was House Bill 3073, and many of you were probably aware of this legislation that was moving forward. But you'll see this page here where there'll be the bill information, and then there's a button that says register to testify. So you'll click on that, and then you will see a registration form that has information that you need to fill out, such as your name, organization, if any, your contact information. And the contact information will not ask for your address. They will just ask for your phone number and email, and the email will be important for you to save. And so once you're done registering to testify, you will get an email from the legislature saying they've received your request to testify, and they'll be sending some additional information and instructions about the committee. So that's why the email is important there. Also, just want to note that there is a check mark box where the legislature, they do want folks to indicate whether they are supporting a bill or opposing a bill. And so obviously in our case with the Tribal Early Learning Plan, we want to make sure that we click support because we are in support of the bill. So these are just sort of additional tips, pointers when you are testifying in person. So again, if you've never done this before, it could be a little daunting just to speak in front of just a bunch of various committee members. So these are just some pointers that I found to be helpful. And as I also mentioned, happy to just continue being a resource for you all if you need some additional help testifying in person. So just for your knowledge, committee rooms typically open about 15 minutes before the start time. If you do show up to a committee early, that's completely fine. But the doors are going to be just closed in the committee room, as there are probably other committees that are wrapping up before another committee starts. So that's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes the committee rooms can also get really packed. Again, it just depends on the agenda item. Also depends if different organizations are having various lobby days. There could just be a lot of people in the building, and especially with a lot of the construction happening, it could just be a flurry of lots of things happening. So we just want you to be aware of that. And also it's kind of fun when it is really full, because you just get to see just so many people advocating for different causes that they care about. And so I think the great thing about also testifying in person is you can certainly bring your own notes. It's not a test or anything. You don't have to memorize things. You really are, the expert of your experience and just the knowledge and the wealth of information that you bring. So please feel free to bring notes. I also have what I've done in the past is testimony that I'll also write out. So if folks are comfortable, you can also read the testimony from the dais, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But legislators are just really excited to hear directly again from leaders and from voices who the legislation will directly impact. And then we just like to, this is sort of like a standard script in terms of a greeting that is pretty common around advocates and agencies that we use in really just addressing the committee members. So of course we will go ahead and share the names of the co-chairs and the vice chairs with you all once the meeting gets scheduled, but usually just go something like addressing to the co-chairs and the vice chairs their names, and then also just stating for the record who your name is, and then that you're really here that you're here to testify in the support of House Bill, etc. So that's usually the way that folks open up. Also want to mention that the time of each speech is really left up to the discretion of the chair, depending on just how full the agenda is. I think my best practice in doing this for the last couple of years is to keep testimony from anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes. Just with my experience, I think after 3 minutes, it just becomes just a really long testimony. And the chairs also often have packed agendas, and so they like to kind of keep things moving after testimony is done with the next testimony. So just something to be aware if you're trying to prepare a testimony, that it's typically about 2 to 3 minutes is how much is allotted. And yeah, I think I covered most of the basics on this slide. I also just want to say that myself and Director Chatterjee will also be in the hearing room as well. So if there are technical questions that get asked about the bill, we are certainly there as a resource. And so we can also go up so that you're also not stuck there answering a bunch of questions if you don't want to. Director Chatterjee and I will be there from DELC to help answer any questions. So this is the second piece, which is either, again, in addition to testifying in person, or if you'd rather just submit testimony, these are just instructions for how you go about doing that. So again, this information is still on the main Oregon Legislative website. Folks actually have up to 48 hours, so about 2 days after the committee starts to submit testimony. So if, let's say, a committee started on Monday morning, you would have until Wednesday morning to submit testimony on the bill. So it's great that you have up to 2 days to submit testimony. For example, if you couldn't make it on Monday to submit that. Let's see. And then this is what the testimony submission form will look like. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but there's a couple different drop-down functions. You will choose the committee, and then there's a drop-down for selecting the meeting date of the committee. Again, we will provide all that information if you'd like for when the bill will be scheduled and the time that it will take place. And there's also another form. So very similar to submitting the testimony form for going in person. There's also a testimony form for submitting the form as well. So basic information still, your name, address, email address, organization, position on the bill. And then the feature here is that they will ask you to upload your testimony. So I believe either a Word document or a PDF document is fine. So you want to save your testimony and just upload it that way. And I think I'm close to the end, probably with just 2 more slides. But after you submit your testimony, you will also be asked, there's a checkbox that basically says, you're not a robot, you're a real person. Believe it or not, I think sometimes there are just the way that the internet is nowadays, like there's just interesting things that happen via online things. And so I think this is just a verification of you're a human, you're not a robot, and you are submitting this testimony as yourself. Submitting the button will then verify that your testimony is in. And then I just sort of pulled up this screenshot from that from the DELC bill, House Bill 3073 in the 2021 session. But after you submit your testimony, you can wait a couple of minutes, but it will start to appear under testimony. So these are all of the different people, for example, and also organizations, if they want to put down their organizations and their positions who have supported the DELC bill in the 2021 session. So if you submit your testimony, your name will appear, organization, position, etc. Let's see. And I think that is towards the end. So this is our final slide. Again, just happy to be here as a resource for you all. Dana and I touched base a little bit, and we were just thinking that prior to session starting, it would be helpful to know, or just, to just gauge who would be interested in testifying, and in what ways would you be interested in testifying, either in person, remotely, etc. This is just something for your consideration, and we don't have to decide this now, but sometimes just having at least 1 or 2 members testifying in person is really helpful, just for the committee to see you in person, and also submitting written testimony. So I think having a combination of both could be really impactful. I also want to say that our DELC director, Alyssa Chatterjee, is also planning to testify on the bill, since we are just really excited that this is moving forward, and we can just further coordinate details with you all in terms of sharing our messaging, our testimony, so that we can just potentially coordinate some things around who can highlight what pieces of the bill. And I think that's about it. And then just my last point, as I mentioned, I will be sort of the point person in the building with Director Chatterjee, meeting with legislators to talk about our entire DELC agenda, which includes just the 3 bills in total. So if you are interested in joining with us to various meetings, please definitely let us know as well. Or if you'd like to have your own meetings, that is completely fine. But we just wanted to offer a moment to collaborate if you'd like. So that is all I have, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And as I mentioned before, I will be sending these slides over. So feel free to ask additional questions if you'd like.
Thanks, Kathy. I was just going to add, we will make sure you all know when House Bill 2815 is scheduled. In particular, we'll make sure you know when all of our bills are getting scheduled, but for this one, so folks will have notice. We also, if your tribe has a lobbyist, then you should have been CC'd, but we've reached out to your lobbyists so that they're aware as well. But if there's anything we can do to support, please let us know. We're happy to help you with testimony, with organizing. I know we've helped facilitate some test sessions prior to committee meetings. So just Kathy's there, Dana's there, I'm here. We want to make sure we can be as supportive as possible throughout the session. And thanks so much for this overview, Kathy.
Thank you, Alyssa and Kathy. And I'm really hoping that all of the tribes will provide testimony either in person, remotely, or in writing. The way that each tribe handled the set aside funds was so different and really served and met the needs of their community, which again always showcases sovereignty and the importance to leave those decisions up to the tribe. So we really want to showcase and to highlight the things that we were able to do, and that'll take all of the 9 tribes to provide some type of testimony. So whatever each tribe's channel is to be able to do that, if everyone could start working on that, to ask if it's a letter from council, if it's a letter from program personnel, or even the ability to travel and provide testimony in person, would be greatly appreciative. This can really make a difference, in having these funds secured would kind of move us away from shorter term purchases and move it into really impacting our programs in long term, and whether it be positions. I know for us, not knowing if these funds are going to be permanent, we're hesitant to use them for staff time or anything that we would have to pull back later. So getting these funds and getting it codified into legislature would be wonderful for the tribes and the growth of our early education program. So if we could all kind of work on those things, it would be great.
Thank you, Sonia. That made me think of maybe a clarifying comment. Typically, if there's a bill hearing, they talk about the bill first, right? And so usually what would happen is Delk would give kind of an overview of the legislation, and then Sonia, to your point, what I think is most powerful is hearing from you all about how you've used the resources in the past and what this bill does. And so we'd also be able to help coordinate a panel. And so that's similar to what we did when Sonia and Julie were able to join with the House Early Childhood and Human Services Committee in September. So it would likely be a similar kind of division of work, and that we would talk brass tacks, what the bill is, but really look to you all to speak to the impacts and importance. And we'd be happy to help coordinate everybody who's interested in testifying, and whether that's a combination of virtual, in person, and written, we can support that testimony.
Real quick, I just want to acknowledge that Jennifer Reed, Jemiah, and Malia are all on the call now. And I see Julie has her hand raised. Go ahead, Julie.
I just wanted to double check to make sure that I understand what all of you have said, that we can have testimony submitted, representative of our given tribe, like say, you know, I'm happen to be Hanas and I'm a tribal council member from the Confederated Tribes of the Kuslu, Onkan Isla tribes, and I can give in-person testimony, I can give written testimony digitally, and or I can ask my tribal council if they would like to submit a letter, and they can submit that digitally. And or our education director, Jemiah Washman, could do a similar but different thing. If he so desired, he could give in-person testimony, he could give written testimony. I just want to make sure that I understand that if I understood what you guys were saying correctly, just so we get representation, is that the most important part of this whole process?
Yes, and it wouldn't be limited. So like Julie, if you wanted to send a letter and Jemiah, you wanted to testify virtually, there's no limit to the number of folks that can testify. And I think for this bill in particular, legislators are really going to want to prioritize hearing from the tribes on this. So I imagine we'll see more flexibility to make sure that anybody who wants to testify on behalf of their tribe would have a chance to do that in their preferred format.
Thank you so much.
Dana, I'm sorry I have to run. It was really wonderful to see everybody, and I hope everyone's taking care.
Thanks for being here, Alyssa. If anyone has questions, just email Alyssa. No, I'm just kidding. Have a good rest of your day, Alyssa. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
Are there any questions, any other questions for Kathy? So after this meeting, we'll send out the slide deck and then share the information about how to the links to OLIS, what does OLIS stand for? Oregon Legislative Information System. I don't know. I'm making
Yeah, no, you got it. Yes, there's a
Okay.
lot of acronyms involved, but yes, no, great. Yeah, OLIS is the Oregon Legislative website. So
perfect.
yeah.
And then I can also put together a list of those who are interested in testifying. If there's like if we do want to do a panel, or I could put together like a Google form to sign up for it, whatever would be best. Or I could just reach out individually along with Sonia and Julie to make sure we've got enough support for this in person, virtually, and or written. So we'll help with the coordinating. Thanks, Kathy, for coming on and giving a thorough overview and helping to kind of prepare us for this. That was really helpful getting to hear that. And so I guess if you wanted to hop off, go for it. I really appreciate your help. Unless there's any other questions, one more chance.
Well, thank you all so much for inviting me. And I'm sorry I do have to hop off as well, but yeah, we'll keep talking and communicating and collaborating. So thank you again.
Bye. Well, I know that things got pushed a little bit further out because of technical difficulties. So the plan was to talk about funding distribution. And so we can jump back into that. Sorry, I thought I saw somebody come off mute. I guess I didn't. Let me get my screen shared. Okay. So I should be sharing my screen with the funding distribution methods. Oh, I have to go back forward. There we go. So basically we were hoping that we could gauge the level of interest in either option 1 or 2, and then based on which TAC is preferring, that we could then discuss the more specific process options that would be better for funding. So does that sound like an okay plan to everyone? As a reminder, option 1 is needs-based, just where tribes specify the amount that they would need each biennium. And this option recognizes that tribes have different ability to spend funds, different capacity. And I have heard from a couple of TAC members that this is the preferred approach, is that tribes specify the amount they needed rather than option 2, which would be equal distribution with a process to reallocate unspent funds. And so in that side of things, the way that that would work is either that each tribe would receive an equal amount, 1/9 of the total, just split evenly, which right now with the numbers that we have would be 573,000. And so it could end up being a different amount just based on what the legislature determines. And then with this option, there's a couple different ways that it could work, but basically tribes would give a proposed spending plan to DELC that can exceed the equal amount of 573,000, and that partway through the biennium, like in the second year of the biennium, funds could be unspent funds or unwanted funds could be redistributed. And so there's 3 different process options for how the redistribution could happen, which only the first 2 really seem feasible. But I guess the place to start is, does TAC prefer the first option of needs-based or the second option of equal distribution?
Dana, how do you want us to do this? You want us to write in the chat, or you want us to say out loud?
It can, whatever you're comfortable with doing.
So, again, you know who I am and where I'm from. I would go with option 1 for the application process. Do you want us to do the redistribution option 2 now too? I would go with option 2 for the redistribution process. Do you need me to put that in a chat or an email?
No, just whichever option you prefer, as that's the first question. And so then within option 1 is there's 2 different processes that it could look like. So first we just want to determine if the first option or the second option is better, and then dive into the specific processes that we could follow in those options. So I'm seeing a couple more comments in the chat that option 1, the needs-based approach, and option 1 for applications from Jory and from Cow Creek.
So Dana, just question, so say, what if we do like the option 1 and the requests are significantly less than the set aside would be, overall, what would happen to the remaining funds?
That's a good question. So I think that'd be a similar process to the redistribution. So let's say that we end up with the 4.5 million plus the continuing service level fund. So it's basically like 5.1 something million dollars in total. And let's say that we get requests from tribes that are a lower amount than that 5.1 million, then we could say, okay, great, everybody who made these asks, you get that amount. And then with whatever's left over, we could say, based on the percentage of funding that you've asked for, we just do the math and figure out what that percentage would be additional with what's remaining in the funds, or say what's remaining and just say splitting it evenly if you would like to take on these additional funds, and go through that process until we're able to allocate all of the funds, I think would probably be how we would handle that. Although there's still other potential avenues. And it really depends on the budget side of things. But because the Tribal Early Learning Fund is its own pot of dollars, it's separate and distinct from like the general fund or the early learning account, which has there's different rules that it would be prescribed. So there is the potential that extra funds could roll over and just stay in that Tribal Early Learning Fund and be dispersed based on like when future needs are identified by the tribes. So there's a few different ways that it could work. That's a good question. And also in the opposite direction, like let's say that there's 5.1 million in tribes each individually like requested over 5.1 million, then it could be awarding everybody who requested the equal amount or lower. And then for those who are above, it could also be like a math problem where we just reduce it down to that proportional amount that fits within the total funding. Or it could be based on like specific priorities that tribes identify and Otella identifies as something that gets like preference for funding. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways it could work.
And I think the messaging that I just really want tribes, because during the meetings, and I know the way that we have spent the funding because of, again, when the money hits in the biennium, and sometimes we're at the latter part of the first year or even beginning part of the second year, or not structuring that it seems like a lot of money to spend a lot of time. But if this is written in, this really would allow tribes. I've heard, various tribes say they have building needs, they have center repair needs, they have staffing needs, so just so that everyone understands these funds can go towards that. It doesn't have to go towards like the spending that we did with the last money that we received, that we had a less amount of time to think about, or really to put into our center needs. So just because this is, $500,000 can be very impactful in getting a building up, or getting equipment, or getting staffing needs, met. I know for us with the tribe, we used to be in Marion County, we used to have very good pay for our early education. And then when all the other programs started applying for Oregon OPK and Birth to 5 and all of those, and they used that money to raise their staff, we're now behind. So that'll be something that we would directly look at in these funds, is being able to offer a competitive wage, as well as more training and opportunities for grow our own programs in early education to get more of our community members certified. And so those are like some of the things, but just want all the tribes to know the potential for this money.
Yeah, that's a great call out, because having a funding stream that's not stable and you don't know if it's going to continue, you can't really, well, you could, but you probably shouldn't invest in staffing, because that's something that you're going to need ongoing. And I saw Angie F put it in the chat that option 1 is the preference. Thank you. And so the intention for the tribal early learning plan and the fund is that these are gonna be ongoing, that the 4.5 for tribes, well, 5.1 total for tribes would continue and be appropriated every biennium so that you could make those investments into your workforce and things like grow your own or increasing the salary scale, things like that. Let's see, I think everyone has made a comment of which option they prefer, except for
Me,
Leah, or sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just said I hadn't yet. I kind of am like one, I think has such a potential that for some of the tribes that have mentioned the needs within their community to ask for that and potentially receive more. But the other side of me wants all of the tribes to be able to utilize the 500,000 in their communities to really lift up early education. So it's difficult in that making like that decision for all the tribes, but I think we would probably go with one as well to if there are just to be able to allow to ask for what your needs are.
Yeah. And another good thing about being able to like say this is how much we could use is even if it's more funding than we have available, it can be used strategically to advocate for additional funds in future sessions, because if we have $5.1 million, but then tribes are saying we actually are asking for $10.8 million, like, I mean, that shows that there's a gap. Malia, have you had the chance to take a look at the different process options for funding? And I don't know if you've had the chance to talk to Diane about it, but if you have, definitely, I'm interested in knowing what Burns thinks. But if not, I can always follow up with like an email, and I have like a little poll that I put together so that those who aren't able to attend this meeting can still give us the feedback, because we want to hear from everyone.
Yeah, let's do the poll. Everything needs to go through Diane, and I don't know if she's seen it. I know that it's been sent to her, but we haven't physically sat down with each other and gone through it. So
Okay. Yeah, that sounds.
and she gets the final say. I just kind of relay stuff. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And this is a question like about how funding gets distributed. It might come up during the session. It could be something that's asked about, but it is not something that we have to decide today. And I mean, there's still other potential options like having the fund existing and funds going into it and rolling over from one biennia to the next. And so that's something that we're looking at as well on the budget side of things, which could make some of these process options a little bit easier. But it was still really helpful just to get an idea of what most of the tribes are thinking as to what would be the more preferable option. So I really appreciate that, and for the various considerations like Sonia, what you mentioned. Are there any other thoughts, feedback, comments before we move into tribal discussion time? Then we can go into tribal discussion time. We did last month talk about having Grand Ronde come for our February Tribal Advisory Committee meeting and kind of talk about their different funding streams and programs and how they do the blending and braiding. So we will have that as a discussion topic. Tribes can use this time for whatever you want to talk about. One of those topics could be looking at what our future meetings maybe center on, like if we want to bring in other experts, like hear from other tribes what they're doing. So we could do that, or if there's something that the co-chairs might have on their docket to bring up.
Well, I will just bring up one thing that that we had talked about, is once the legislation about talking to the TAC about possibly moving our meetings to every other month. It just sometimes for some of us, we get so many meetings with the different state agencies, and so I don't know, I just want to open that as a conversation piece for other tribes and what they potentially think of that, or if not, if they want to continue to meet, do we then want to structure it around maybe providing some PD during that time, or highlight programs or funding streams or something, just so that it's real intentional when we meet. So what does anyone think?
Sonia, it's Julie, and I think that's a great idea. The only thing that I would ask you is that if something comes up unexpected that we need to come together as a group, that we would leave it like flexible or optional, that if there's some kind of emergency that comes up, that yourself, myself, or Alyssa and Dana, if an emergency situation comes up where you need us to all come together, that you'll call us out. But I think I think that's kind of you to offer the idea of every other month.
Yeah, I think that we leave it in there as meetings, like if there was something that we could call for a meeting, or the agency could call for a meeting.
Yeah, definitely. If there was like a decision that had to happen by a certain time. So great.
We have some committee members that haven't, is it a time issue with them when we meet? Are they in the classroom? I know we'd moved it towards the end of the day because a lot of the programs, kids were gone by the time that we meet, but just so that we have those tribes in the room.
A good question. I know that's something going on with Klamath lately, having to be in the classroom. I've heard from Jory that they've had staffing challenges. I'm glad that Jory's here today, but that definitely could be a factor, and switching to every other month would make it easier for everyone to be here, because that's really important. I mean, first of all, I don't want to take too much space, but you all, as working for tribes, you have a lot of hats, and there's a lot of state agencies that also ask a lot. And so we can't reasonably expect to have all of this time. We need to, as like different state agencies, also be collaborative and coordinate things. And I mean, being able to take one other thing off your plate, it sounds like it would be beneficial. So I see some things in the chats that are also supportive of doing every other month meetings. So it sounds like that would likely be the meeting cadence for one after the legislation goes through. So starting in like July of 2025, kind of moving it to bi-monthly meetings. Jemiah, Angie, F also support that. So,
Dana, can I ask you a question?
of course.
I don't know if you want to or not, but you sent us all different kind of information and requests and comments, email wise, when to address the concern that Sonia brought up about the best time of day for everybody, like, the end of the day and that kind of stuff. You could do like, maybe you could do like those doodle poll things that you do or something like that, just to double check to make sure that this is a good time for everybody. I don't know if that's needed or not. So. As far as getting all 9 tribes to come. I don't know.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And we can just reassess that a certain time of day or a certain time of the week, or maybe even like a different time of the month might be better to accommodate everyone. Because we really do want at least one of 2 representatives from each of the 9 tribes to be able to be here. So Sonia, thank you for bringing up the scheduling and the meeting cadence. And I'll put a doodle poll on my to-do list along with the meeting recap. Since Dory is out this afternoon, she'll probably work on the meeting minutes tomorrow. So Friday or possibly Monday is when all of the recap and follow-up messages are probably going to come out. So just so that you've got a heads up on that. So thanks everybody for being here today. I just want to leave you all with a couple of things to think about. How you feel about how the progress is going so far and what you feel is still needed to support this work. And just that what you think is needed could be what OTELA, the future advisory body, the Oregon Tribal Early Learning Alliance, pending legislation, would like to contract out for next biennium with the DELC set aside dollars, assuming that those are appropriated. And that session will start between now and our next TAC meeting. Our next TAC meeting is on February 12th, which is my son's 6th birthday. But we're celebrating on the weekend, so I will still be here. And if there are any other needs or questions, or if you think of any way that we could support you in the meantime, please reach out to either myself. You can reach out to Alyssa or Paulina or Dory as well. And Kathy as well will share her information too. So in February's TAC meeting, like I said, Grand Ronde will present about having multiple early childhood programs and funding streams and how those are managed. Pretty soon here, we'll also start talking about rulemaking for the new Tribal Early Learning Plan and Fund. And in the meantime, we'll also reach out if any of the hearings are scheduled for the probably the House Early Childhood and Human Services Committee, where this bill is going to go first. But have a great rest of your first month of this new year. And again, just thank you so much for being here and for all the work you've done. It's amazing to see that we have a bill number now. It's HB 2815. So that is important to know for submitting testimony. Is there anything else before we close? Thank you for what you put in the chat, Jemiah. Happy to help. Thank you all for being here. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Jory. I appreciate it. Okay, I need to stop the recording. And there we go.